To keep the engines of modern economies running, you need energy on a scale that is nearly impossible to visualize. When it comes to liquid petroleum gas, China is the undisputed leader, consuming a staggering 8.2 core tons every single year. This chart shows how that volume compares to the rest of the world. China dwarfs the United States, while India's consumption sits much lower at 3.1 core tons. But these statistics eventually distill down into a heavy physical reality. Millions of these individual red cylinders that must be hauled, filled, and distributed across a subcontinent. Despite burning less than half as much gas as its neighbor, it is India that is currently struggling to keep its energy systems functioning. National security isn't necessarily determined by the total volume of fuel consumed, but by the structural dependencies built into how that fuel is used. To understand why India is uniquely vulnerable, we have to look past the top-line numbers and examine who exactly is turning the valve. Gas serves two very different masters depending on which side of the Himalayas you are standing on. In China, 82% of LPG demand is strictly industrial. It powers the petrochemical plants and heavy manufacturing that drive their export economy. India presents a mirrored reality. Here, the exact same percentage, 82%, is dedicated entirely to the domestic kitchen. If a supply shock forces China to cut industrial gas by 10%, factory output slows. Profits may dip, but the social order remains intact. When a supply shock hits India, the crisis moves directly from the national balance sheet to the dinner table. This reliance transforms energy security into a matter of basic human rights, where a lack of fuel means a family cannot cook their next meal. To meet that domestic demand, India has long looked to the Persian Gulf, prioritizing the low costs that come with geographic proximity. That reliance has created a precarious bottleneck. 98% of India's imported LPG arrives from the Middle East, a supply line now threatened by the prospect of a Hormuz blockade. China, meanwhile, draws the majority of its imports from the United States, effectively bypassing the world's most volatile maritime choke points. India remains tethered to a single region, leaving its energy future at the mercy of geopolitical shifts thousands of miles from its shores. This is the double bind of Indian energy. The nation uses gas for survival, and it sources that gas from the most dangerous transit route on the planet. India is not the only country where the domestic kitchen drives the energy market. Other nations share this profile but have managed to insulate themselves from disaster. Brazil is also heavily dependent on LPG for cooking and outdoor markets, but they have secured their future by sourcing fuel from the Western Hemisphere. India is now attempting a similar strategic pivot, turning its gaze away from the Gulf and toward the Americas to diversify its supply. However, rerouting a nation's energy flow is a massive logistical undertaking, requiring new contracts and significantly longer shipping times. The sheer volume required to replace the Middle Eastern supply is staggering, and there are limits to how quickly global production can scale to meet India's needs. The long-haul tankers have begun their journey, but as these international supply chains slowly reorganize, the immediate future for millions of Indian households remains unlit and uncertain.